Hello, my name is Annie, and I am in the CEA Prague program doing an internship this summer with Genevieve, who works for the Wellbeing Center here in Prague. And she unfortunately was on holiday with her family, so I wasn't able to conduct an interview with her, but I thought it would be really interesting to conduct an interview with a therapist in Santa Barbara in the United States to sort of compare what I've been learning from my internship here in Prague. So today I didn't, or not today, but I did an interview with Andrea McGee, who's a licensed therapist. And one thing that I really wanted to discover was how does the conversation around mental health in the United States differ from the conversation around mental health in the Czech Republic? And I was able to gather that there's a really large stigma around mental health in the Czech Republic. People are essentially stigmatized by society if they have a mental illness. And while there are efforts to remove the stigma, there still is one, and this is definitely prevalent in a lot of Genevieve's work at the Wellbeing Center. On the other hand, Dre discussed that there's an increasing focus in American therapy on healing generational trauma, and she defined generational trauma as trauma that's passed down through generations in family. And I believe that this is really interesting because it shows how is this developing open conversation around mental health in the United States, which is really exciting. One of the first questions that I asked Dre was, what are the best things about being a therapist? And the number one thing she said is that it's incredibly rewarding and fulfilling work. You're making a huge, important impact on people's lives. The other thing she mentioned is that there's a great deal of independence. You decide how to run the session and what type of treatment you use and how you implement it. And you're kind of your own boss in that sense. And then, which is something that I really think I would love to do. And lastly, their field of mental health is expanding rapidly. The next thing that I wanted to talk to her about is what are the biggest challenges of being a therapist? And she mentioned two things. One of those is compassion fatigue, and the second one is vicarious trauma. Vicarious trauma is basically when you're hearing all of these traumatic events and things going on in people's lives, and you start to vicariously experience them. These two phenomena can have exhausting effects on your mind. And that was definitely something that she mentioned. And one of my concerns going into this field. The other thing she mentioned is that therapists will not get rich doing therapy. You can only see a certain amount of clients in a week. And once you get up to the max price point that you're charging per client, your income can become fairly stagnant, which was just interesting when considering different incomes and salaries for jobs. And the last thing is that it can be difficult on the body sitting all day. Dre was saying that she sits in a chair for 50 minutes and it's hard on her back. And then if she's lucky, she'll stand up for 10 minutes and get water, go to the restroom, get a snack to prepare for the next client. But if you're taking notes or needing to look something up for your client that's coming in 10 minutes, sometimes you don't even have the opportunity to do that. Things from this interview that I want to definitely consider for the future is that I'm really going to be able to consider the pros and cons of this field in order to evaluate the decision to get licensed. Because being a therapist requires higher education, this is definitely something that I want to meditate on and let really feel right before I decide to go into this field. And lastly, my follow-up plan regarding this interview is that in my next meeting with Genevieve at the Wellbeing Center, I really want to cross-reference the points that Dre made up regarding the up and downsides of being a therapist and what Genevieve has to say. I am curious to see if there will be any cultural differences in what they say, or if it'll be pretty similar. And then the next thing is that I definitely want to continue to reach out to others in the field to build a network. And I plan to do this by contacting practices where I'll be living in the fall. Ideally, I would love to continue this type of internship back in America when I get home. So thank you for listening. And that's all.